This is George's week 1 video recap. So I'm starting out by offering him the flirt pole to see if he wants to play a little bit before we get started. Sometimes when we bring the puppies down here, they know they're down here to work and they're more interested in the food than they are the toy, but I do like to offer this to him first before we get started. George, get it, buddy. All right, we'll get started and then I'll give him a break or two throughout our training session here. So the first thing that we are going to go over is charging our clicker. So when we're teaching our dog a new behavior, we need a way to let them know, yes, you got it right, and that is always going to be followed by a piece of food. So we use the clicker to mark the moment in time that the dog does whatever behavior we ask of them, and that will always be followed by a piece of food. So to start out, George doesn't really know what this clicker means, so we have to charge it. So when I'm charging my clicker, I'm not actually asking him for any behaviors. I am just going to click once and give him a piece of food. So I want him to have a really solid association between hearing that click and getting a piece of food. So we'll do this a couple of times before we get started with our first exercise here. Good job, buddy. Okay, the very first thing we go over in week 1 is getting George to follow a food lure. So when we're using a food lure, we're going to hold a piece of food flat in our hand, and then our palm is going to be facing the dog's snout. The goal is for the dog to stay connected to that piece of food the whole time we're moving. So I just want him to take a few steps with me before I click and release that piece of food. So getting him connected to that piece of food, taking a couple of steps, clicking, releasing that piece of food. We'll do that again. Good job, buddy. We've also been pairing this with his name. So now as I'm getting him to move, I'm just going to say his name. George. George. Good boy. And then I do like to practice this with both hands just to make sure that he will follow a food lure, whether it's in my left or my right hand. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side now. George. Good boy. George. Good job, buddy. George. Good boy. Right from here, we're going to move into hand targets or our touch command. So to start to teach this to our puppy, we are going to start with a piece of food in our hand. Just like we did with the food luring, I'm going to put it right up to George's nose. I want him to start to sniff that piece of food. And then I'm going to quickly pull my hand back. When he reconnects with my hand, that's when I'm going to click and release that piece of food to him. So you can use this touch command kind of as like an informal recall for your dog. So say they have a really solid touch command and you need them to come back to you, you can ask them to touch and they should come over to you. I also like to use it if I'm trying to help my dog get through a distracting environment. If they are really good at touch, I can play a game of touch with them as we move through a space. Okay, so I have the food in my hand, putting it right to his snout. Touch. Good boy. And I'm not pulling it really far away to start, maybe 2 feet. So again, getting him to lick it first, pulling it back, touch. When he reconnects, that's when I click and give him that piece of food. Touch. Good boy. And then just like with following our food lure, I do like to practice this with both hands. George. Touch. Good boy. Touch. Nice work, buddy. We'll do one more. Touch. Good boy. Nice job, bud. We started to introduce the sit command this week. So for this, I am going to use a food lure. I'm going to keep it nice and close to George's face, but I'm just going to bring it up and back to encourage him to sink into that sit position. As soon as his butt hits the ground, that's when I'm going to click, and then I'll give him a piece of food. I like to start to work on duration right off the bat with my sits because eventually we can shape this into a sit-stay behavior. So I will give him a follow-up cookie or two for staying in position before I release him. So I'm going to show him the food. Sit. Good boy. So giving him a follow-up for staying there. Okay. Tossing that release cookie, or get it cookie, to release him out of position. We'll do that again. George, sit. What a good boy. Okay. We'll do one more here. George, sit. What a good boy. Okay. Nice work, buddy. We started to introduce George to wearing a collar, so I like to practice putting the collar on and off, but I like to use food to do this so that my dog is not trying to chew on my hand or the collar as I'm getting it on and off of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show George a few pieces of food, and then I'm going to put them down on the floor. As he's eating it off the floor, that's when I'm going to get the collar on him. So showing him the food, getting him interested in it, dropping it on the floor. As he's eating it off the floor, that's when I get that collar on. Good job, buddy. And then when I want to take the collar off, pretty similar. I'm going to take a piece of food, let him start to lick it while I find the clip for the collar. And that way I can take it off with minimal fuss. We'll do that one more time here. Showing him a couple pieces of food. As he's eating it off the floor, that's when I'll get this collar on. Good job, buddy. Good boy. And then when we go to take it off, letting him lick a piece of food while I find that buckle. Good job, buddy. Very nice. Okay. We started to introduce a mat behavior to the puppies this week. So this is a stationing skill where you can tell your puppy to go to their mat and they'll stay there until you release them. In week 1, we are starting off with pretty low criteria. I just want to work on building up the value of George being on the mat. So when I put the mat down, as soon as he has all 4 paws on it, that's when I'm going to click, and I'm going to feed him a few pieces of food in a row before I release him. And then when he gets off the mat, I'm going to move it to a new spot, and we're going to do that again. The reason I'm moving it to a new spot at the beginning is because I want to create a little bit of excitement around this mat. I want him like seeking it out between each repetition. So that's why I start out with moving it. So I'm going to put the mat down, I'm going to grab some food. As soon as he's over on it, I'll click. And then I'm just going to drop one piece at a time, a couple in a row. Okay. Toss that reset cookie. You didn't see it, bud. George, go get it. What a goofball. Okay. Good job, buddy. And then I'm going to move it to a new spot. And then we'll run through it again. Good boy. So I'm putting the food right down on the mat because eventually we're going to shape this into where he goes over to the mat and settles into a down. Okay. And then you can see as I put it down that George is already starting to make his way back over to it without me having to help him. What a good boy. Just offered me a very nice down there. Okay. We'll do that again. What a good boy. So feeding a few in a row for maintaining that duration. Okay. Tossing that reset. Moving the mat. Clicking when all 4 paws are on. Again, I don't care what position he's in this week. Just building up the value of this mat. Okay. We'll do one last one here. What a good boy. You're so smart. Okay. Good job, buddy. Nice work. In week 1, we started to introduce body handling to George. So he's going to need a lifetime of vet care and grooming. So we want to make sure that he's comfortable being handled at a young age. The first thing we're going to work on with him is a couple of restraint holds. So you'll see this commonly done in the vet's office when they're getting vaccinations or sometime throughout their exam. So while he's on this piece of food, I'm just going to slip my hand underneath his belly. I'm going to mark with a yes and release a piece of food to him. So when I'm doing body handling, I personally like to use a yes as my marker instead of my clicker, only because if I'm working anywhere near his face and I'm clicking close to his ears, it can be quite loud, so I prefer to use a yes for this. So I'm going to get him on a piece of food first. As he's licking it, I'm just going to slide my hand under his belly. Yes, mark with the yes and release that piece of food. We'll do that a couple times here. George. Yes, good boy. Yes, good job, buddy. We've been handling his tail this week as well. George. So when I'm handling a puppy's tail, I'll start by running my hand down their spine and then just gently lifting their tail. Yes, good boy. Yes. Good boy. We'll do that one more time here. Oh, what's that? Yes, good boy. We've been working on handling George's paws. So for this, I'm going to start up at the top of one of his legs, slide my hand down, and then gently pick up one of his paws. Yes, good boy. So this is going to prepare him for when he has to have his nails trimmed. Yes, good job, buddy. I'm going to see if I can get him to turn around so that you guys can see the other side here. What a good boy. Yes. Good job, buddy. We'll do this last front paw. Yes, good boy. And then we've also been handling his face a little bit. So his ears, his eyes, and his mouth. So for his ears, I'm just going to gently lift up an ear, take a look inside. Yes, good boy. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Yes, good job, buddy. Good boy. And then for his eyes, I'm just going to gently lift up his eyelids so I can get a good look here. Yes, good boy. We'll do the other side. Yes, good job, buddy. And then for his mouth, I'm just going to lift up his lips on either side to take a look at his gums. Yes, good boy. Yes, good job, buddy. That is it for George's week 1 video recap. Make sure that you're looking at your video library as well as your handouts. Those will give you much more detailed information on all the skills we've been working on with George this week. Good job, buddy.